My unemployed husband stole $50,000 to go to Paris with his mistress, but the card he used was a federal trap, and agents arrested him in front of all the neighbors. I'm 34 years old. I work in cybersecurity, and I need to tell this story because I still can't believe that my own life turned into one of those cases I used to study at work. The thing is, I was always good with computers, you know? Since I was a kid, I was fascinated by all that tech and programming stuff, so ending up working in cybersecurity was kind of natural for me. I make good money, honestly, really good. And that was never a problem until it became one. But let me backtrack a bit because if I don't tell everything from the beginning, it won't make sense. I met Nathan like 6 years ago, at a mutual friend's party. He was that kind of person who lights up the room when he walks in, you know? Charismatic, funny, always had an interesting story to tell. He was working in sales at the time, or so he said, and things between us flowed super fast. After 8 months, we were already living together, and 2 years later, we got married. My mom told me it was too soon, that I didn't know him well enough, but I was in love and thought she was just being overprotective. I wish I had listened to her, but oh well, too late now. The first few years were good, I guess. Nathan was attentive, always made me laugh, and although his sales job wasn't as stable as mine, I didn't have a problem covering more expenses. Like, we're a couple, right? That's how it's supposed to work. You support each other when things are tough. The problem is that things for Nathan were always tough. First, he lost that sales job because, according to him, his boss was an idiot who didn't value his talent. Then he got another job, also in sales, but only lasted like 4 months before quitting because the commissions weren't what they had promised him. Then there was another job, and another, and I lost count. Each time he had a different excuse. It was always someone else's fault, never his. By last year, Nathan basically wasn't working. He had stopped actively looking for employment, or at least that's what it seemed like to me, and he spent most of the day at home watching Netflix or playing video games. When I asked him about it, he'd get defensive, said he was looking for the right opportunity, that he didn't want to settle for just anything. I was working from home like 3 days a week, so I'd see him there lying on the couch in his pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. And honestly, I was starting to feel resentful. Not only was I completely supporting the household, the rent, the bills, the food, everything, but on top of that, he wasn't even doing household chores. I'd come home after an exhausting meeting and the house was a disaster. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes thrown everywhere. But like a good wife trying to save her marriage, I kept putting up with it. I thought, well, maybe he's going through depression. Maybe he needs support. I can't abandon him when he's struggling. How stupid I was. Seriously. Because while I was killing myself working and justifying his laziness, he was planning how to steal $50,000 from me. Yeah, you read that right. $50,000. It all started one night in March of this year. I had been working late on an important project, basically helping develop a training program to detect financial fraud. It's ironic, isn't it? My literal job was teaching people to identify scams and fraud, and I didn't see what was happening in my own house coming. As part of that project, we had dummy accounts, meaning fake accounts linked to real credit cards but closely monitored for training purposes. It was like a kind of honeypot to catch fraudulent activity and study it. That night I went to bed around 1 in the morning, exhausted, and left my laptop on the living room table because I had to keep working early the next day. Nathan was supposedly already asleep. What I didn't know is that bastard got up around 2 in the morning, grabbed my laptop, and started snooping. I found out later from the security cameras. Yeah, we have cameras in the house, another irony considering my job, that he was sitting there for like an hour going through my files. And he found the information for those training accounts, the card numbers, the expiration dates, the security codes, everything. I didn't realize anything at that moment, obviously. I got up the next day, worked normally. Nathan acted like always, like everything was normal. About 2 weeks went by like that, me not knowing anything, until one morning I was checking my banking app while having coffee, just checking my accounts like I always do. And I almost dropped my phone when I saw a $50,000 charge on one of my cards. $50,000. And my heart started beating super fast, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I thought there was an error, that maybe it was a glitch in the app, but no, there it was, as real as life itself. I started reviewing the transaction details and realized it wasn't a single charge. 10 was multiple. Plane tickets to Paris in first class, 2 tickets to be exact, a 5-star hotel for 10 days, expensive restaurants, luxury car rental, purchases at designer stores, all in Paris. And the dates coincided with a trip that Nathan had told me he was going to take to visit a college friend who supposedly lived in Boston. He said it was only going to be a week, that his friend was going to pay for everything because he missed seeing him. That whole story. I even drove him to the airport, like an idiot, wishing him a good trip and telling him to send me photos. But here's where it gets interesting. Because while I was sitting there in absolute shock looking at these charges, my cybersecurity brain started working. I realized something. The card he had used wasn't my personal card. It was one of the dummy cards from the training project. I mean, technically it was a real card with real funds to make the training program more realistic, but it was linked to a whole fraud, detection and tracking system. Every transaction made with that card was automatically monitored and analyzed by several algorithms that I myself had helped design. Nathan had just committed credit card fraud on an account that was literally designed to catch credit card fraud. That account had more security and monitoring than probably any other account in the country. It was like a thief trying to rob a police station. I sat there with my phone in my hand and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Part of me was devastated because my husband had stolen from me, had lied to me, was obviously cheating on me with someone else because why buy 2 tickets if not? But another part of me, the professional and maybe a bit vindictive part, was fascinated by how stupid he had been, and the first thing I did was take screenshots of everything. Every transaction, every detail, every date. Then I called my best friend Lauren and told her everything. While trying not to hyperventilate, she told me to call a lawyer immediately, so I contacted Chloe, a lawyer specializing in family law that a colleague had once recommended to me. Chloe told me to document everything, but not to confront Nathan yet. To wait until he came back from the trip, and in the meantime, she was going to prepare the divorce papers and evaluate the legal options. In that same afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Agent Keller, a federal investigator who worked in financial fraud. Apparently, the detection system had done its job and had automatically flagged all those transactions as suspicious. Agent Keller asked me if I had authorized those charges, if I had knowledge of them, if I had lost my card, or if anyone else had access to my accounts. I told him the truth, that my husband had taken the information without my permission and that I had just discovered it. He asked me like 1,000 questions, took my statement, and told me they were going to open a formal investigation. The next few days were surreal. Nathan sent me messages from Boston telling me about how great a time he was having with his friend, and there I was, knowing he was in Paris, spending my money with another woman. I didn't respond much, just enough not to raise suspicions. Meanwhile, Chloe was preparing everything for the divorce, and Agent Keller kept me informed about the investigation. Turns out they were able to track everything, every place where Nathan had used the card, every purchase. They even had footage from the security cameras of the hotel where he was staying with his lover. Nathan came back from the trip a week later, tanned and relaxed, with a huge smile on his face. I picked him up at the airport and didn't say anything. Just listened to him talk about how great it had been to see his friend, about what a good time he'd had in Boston, all those lies coming out of his mouth without any remorse. We got home and he was in such a good mood that he even offered to cook dinner, something he never did. I just watched him thinking, this guy has no idea what's waiting for him. That night, after dinner, Nathan was drinking wine in the living room, all relaxed and happy, and he started talking. I don't know if it was the alcohol or if he was just so arrogant he thought he could get away with it, but he started dropping details about the trip. That the hotel was incredible, that they had eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants, that they had rented a Mercedes convertible to drive through the French countryside. And there I was, sitting with my phone discreetly recording everything, because Chloe had told me that any additional evidence was going to be useful. I asked him casually, "And your friend paid for all that?" I thought he was in a bad financial situation. And Nathan, the idiot, laughed and said, "Well, let's say I found a way to finance the trip." I insisted, "What do you mean?" And he, already half drunk and proud of himself, told me how he had found the card information on my laptop, how he thought I would never notice because I had so many work accounts, how he planned the whole trip with Nicole. Yeah, that was the other woman's name. Using that money. He even bragged, saying it was super easy, that all these security systems I talked so much about were useless. I kept recording while he basically confessed everything, completely incriminating himself without realizing it. When he finished talking, I asked him, "Do you know which card you used exactly?" And he said no, that he just grabbed one at random. So I explained to him, very calmly, although inside I was furious, that the card he had used was a training account to detect fraud, that every transaction had been monitored, that there was already a federal investigation underway, and that he had basically handed himself over on a silver platter. The face he made was epic. First he went white, then red, then he started stuttering, trying to say it was a joke, that he wasn't serious, that he was exaggerating, because of the wine. But it was already too late. I showed him the screenshots, the emails from Agent Keller, the preliminary investigation report. Nathan started to panic, saying, "How could I do this to him? That we were spouses, that we were supposed to be on the same team." And I could only think, really? He's telling me this while he just confessed to stealing $50,000 from me to go on a trip with his lover? I told him to leave the house that same night, that I had already talked to a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. Nathan started begging, crying, promising he would change, that it would never happen again, all the typical manipulation. But I was already decided. I packed some of his things in a suitcase, threw them outside the door, and told him to leave before I called the police myself. What Nathan didn't expect was that the police were already on their way. Turns out Agent Keller had coordinated with local authorities to arrest him that night, and just as Nathan was leaving the building with his suitcase, 2 patrol cars and Agent Keller arrived. They read him his rights right there in the parking lot, with the neighbors watching from the windows and everything. It was humiliating for him, satisfying for me, although also a bit surreal to see my husband handcuffed and being put in a patrol car. They took him to the station for questioning. He tried to blame me, saying I had given him permission to use the card, that it was a misunderstanding, but they had too much evidence against him. The house cameras showing him taking my laptop in secret at 2 a.m, the tracking of all the transactions in Paris, his recorded confession where he admitted everything, plus the text messages with Nicole where they planned the trip and made fun of how dumb I was for not noticing. Yeah. Agent Keller showed me some of those messages later, and it was like an additional stab, but it also reinforced my decision to leave him. Nathan ended up accepting a plea deal like 3 months later. The charges were serious. Credit card fraud at the federal level is no joke, but his lawyer negotiated that if he returned all the money and agreed to do community service for 2 years, plus probation, they could reduce the sentence. He had to borrow from his parents to pay the restitution, which gave me special satisfaction because they had always thought I wasn't good enough for their precious son. Now they knew exactly what kind of person he was. The divorce was finalized like 5 months after all this. Chloe did an incredible job making sure Nathan didn't get anything. We didn't really have shared assets because everything was in my name. I was the one who paid for everything, so basically he left with what he brought to the marriage, which wasn't much. Nicole, by the way, left him as soon as he got arrested. Apparently, his appeal diminished considerably when he could no longer take her on luxury trips paid for with stolen money. Who would have thought? Right? Now I'm living alone in the apartment, the same one where we lived together, but it feels completely different. I changed the locks, obviously, redecorated a bit, and basically erased any trace of Nathan from my life. I blocked his number, blocked him on all social media, and asked our mutual friends to please not tell me anything about him because I simply don't care. Some of them tried to make me feel bad, saying I was too harsh, that I didn't give him a second chance, but most understood that what he did was unforgivable. My work in cybersecurity is more interesting than ever now. Turns out my case became a perfect example for the training program, obviously with all personal information removed. It's kind of surreal to think that my own experience of being a fraud victim is now helping train other people to prevent similar situations. And I have to admit there's something satisfying about that, like turning something so horrible into something useful. Last week, my mom came to visit me and told me I looked happier than she had seen me in years. And she's right. Honestly. I no longer have that constant anxiety of wondering if Nathan is going to find work, of carrying all the financial responsibility, of having to clean up the mess he leaves both physically and emotionally. Now, I come home after work, and the house is exactly as I left it in the morning. Clean and quiet. I can watch Netflix without someone complaining about my choices. I can cook whatever I want without having to consider someone else's tastes. Basically, I can live my life without having to take care of an adult who should be able to take care of himself. Lauren says I should try dating someone again, but honestly, I'm not in a hurry. I'm enjoying being alone, rediscovering myself, focusing on my career and my hobbies. I went back to doing yoga, something I had stopped because Nathan always made fun of it, saying it was a waste of time. I'm reading more, seeing my friends more often, basically doing all the things I stopped doing when I was trying to keep afloat, a marriage that was clearly doomed from the start. Do I regret marrying Nathan? Sometimes, yes. When I think about all those years I wasted with him, all the money I spent supporting him, all the red flags I ignored. But also, in a strange way, I'm grateful that all this happened. It taught me to trust my instincts, not to justify unacceptable behavior just because I love someone, and it definitely taught me that I need to be with someone who is my partner in every sense. Not a parasite who's only there for my money. And well, it also gave me an incredible story to tell, you have to admit that.